Expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back to Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out. But today, there is no Meckie. And we have... Feel free to introduce yourself.
Oh, it's Pines.
It's Pines, yeah, that's right. Oh, wow, it's been such a long time since we've spoken, and I'm really glad you're assisting. And you've called in. Like, we haven't had a caller in a little while, let's just say that.
Yeah, we've got to do more RTs and that, but probably getting all your energy spent with Plato's Cave.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It is kind of like that.
Yeah.
So, look,
Speaking of energy.
Yeah. So
that's what I was thinking, that this credit system you brought up, that they may just give us a certain amount for a week or a month and it has to get spent, and it's a great reset every week, literally, for everyone. That maybe it's based off electricity, because it seems to be going in that direction of this solar power, battery, wind power aspect. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know a lot of people can find faults with all of it, but it just seems to be happening more. And Tesla's got some sort of green card passport. I mean, that factory he built in China, no one said nothing. They just let him at it. No, it wasn't even, like hand-me-outs to people. It's just no, get it done. Someone at the very tip of the top of the pyramid organized that, and now they're punching out 1 million cars a year. It's pretty incredible. They built a giant factory in like 10 months.
Yeah,
they blitzed it. And so this self-storage, and just walking down the street, I've never really noticed it, but I noticed that a lot of houses do have solar power, and it was when that solar power initiative took hold about 10 years ago. You got a rebate, money back, blah blah blah. My friend's got it. I didn't even ask him. So it's already sort of been set up that they're almost going to make us self-sufficient in a way, and that it's all connected to the big grid too. So we've got the NBN, that's all on one giant cable. They fooled us with that. So the next step is the monetary system. And I think Starlink's involved as well. Put all that onto those satellites, and there's only 3,000 up there out of a potential 30,000 they want. So we still got some time. I think it could happen overnight, this great reset, but it might just take the next 8 years to 2030, Agenda 2030. So don't know, but the idea is that electricity itself will be the main sort of money generator aspect. Just got to earn electricity instead of earn money. I don't know. That doesn't make sense.
I think there's something there, and to be honest, look, the power thing, you're absolutely right. So you mentioned a whole bunch of things. Number one, Australia has one of the highest independent or individual power generation adoption of solar panels, and yes, it's all thanks to the government's rebate. Otherwise, no one would have done it. There's a little caveat or catch that the company that you sign up for will sign you on as their supplier of energy, and therefore they end up selling your power out as though they made it, and you don't get all that money yourself. Yes, there's not a one-to-one. So if you use a kilowatt or make a kilowatt, there's a different amount that you get. If you
sounds like a shifty mobile phone plan.
It really is. So, and once they've got you as one of their suppliers of electricity, it's very difficult to get out of it.
Mm.
So sorry, I won't say who it is. One of my friends signed up with the package, was like, no money down. And that, okay, cool. It wasn't even $3,800 or whatever, right? Government package, you can you get solar on your roof. So they did. But now they're not allowed to leave that contract.
Right.
And they don't. Yes, there's an amount of money that they're sending to the grid in form of power generation, but the company makes it. They don't make it, and there is only like a 1 to 60, so 1 to 0.6 ratio of them buying power off the grid for themselves at 1 and selling, and the reduction of power by their own generation is like 0.6. And it's just awful. So it's not a 1-to-1. If it was 1-to-1, sure. And that's why a lot more people now are doing I've got solar on my roof and I'm going to store it in my battery. And once it's full, then I'm going to send it to the grid. The generation of power that's excess. So after I've used it into my battery, anything else above that goes straight to the grid. And that's smart, but you're not, the form of payment now is in the lessened amount of power you use from the grid. But we've spoken about this before. I don't know, opponents, if you knew, but the electric vehicle, if you were to have one in your house, it is 33 kilowatts to charge it. And it's a lot of power that's needed for that. And if every house in Australia had an EV and they were charging at nighttime, then there wouldn't be enough power in the grid to charge it, which is hilarious. You could drain your entire resource of your household battery by charging your EV. In fact, there's more power in your EV than there is in your household battery, and therefore you could actually run your house off your car. Isn't that crazy? You could actually do it the other way.
Yeah. Oh, the numbers and stats people use to go at each other, I don't know, because we're assuming everyone's got an EV vehicle in Australia. Not everyone even has a gas car. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The numbers are skewed all over the place.
Yeah. So
I love the technology.
Yeah.
I've got an e-bike, and the torque that it can pull is incredible.
Yeah.
And the silence, and it's a good feeling. And you watch these people drive Teslas for the first time. And
I know, it's just nuts.
Whoa,
I know.
They feel it in their gut, the G-force.
Yeah.
We've had this tech.
My friends, the Tesla, I think it's a Model S. It accelerates faster than my car.
No doubt.
No, it does. And, there's no way in the world I could compete against it.
And it's actually a nice looking car. I exaggerate when I see every second car is a Tesla.
Yeah.
But damn, 1 out of 10 is pretty high, I think, at least.
But in Australia,
yesterday.
Oh, okay. So, but in Australia,
out and about.
we for the most part, we have coal-fired power generation, and all you're doing is displacing the origin of the emissions. So the vehicle itself is emission-free, and I really respect that. And yes, they were around before the petrol engine. The first cars were electric. The first cars. The first automobiles were actually electric. And
1890s, I think.
When?
1890s.
Yeah. And so they were made by carriage makers. And anyway, so we had it all the way back then. Then the petrol engine came in, and it's been, a monopoly ever since. I think this is a good revolution to have. But
it's a controlled revolution.
It is. Sure. It is. But when you look,
one of the things I've seen recently with the charging stations, they've gotten it down to 8 minutes to get up to 80%.
That's pretty good.
And so the battery, people may think, okay, the battery will degrade quicker. Not necessarily. The ones they're building today, they have like a 10-year life cycle of being fully discharged to fully charged. 10 years, that's pretty good. You're going to go see a mechanic every other year for your normal car. And so, again, the debate of I just want to accept the technology. Finally, they give it to us. Unfortunately, they took a long time to get, the patents on everything and everyone else's ideas. But it's coming. It's coming. We just might have to go through that little painful stint they've been mentioning as well. So
The other thing is the power, the cost of power. This is not thought of yet, but it's a wonderful idea. And if you have, at the moment in Australia, we have, not every power provider offers this, but you've got peak power and then shoulder power and then off peak. And that's a lessening amount, so proportionally. So during the day, it's more expensive. The shoulder is nearly as expensive, and the new off peak is much cheaper. That would disappear because it's based on the amount of power generation required for the load. And if everyone was charging their EVs at night, where normally there is almost no power usage, then now suddenly there's a great amount of power usage. It would just be peak all the way through.
Yeah.
And so at the moment,
Tesla to the rescue. He's got those giant battery container size things he's installing, at least in America. There's a lot going on. There was, this is why I think it's all controlled and manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
But they're letting him do whatever he wants.
That's right.
It's coming. That world's coming.
Yeah.
But they're also on the top layer of mainstream media. It's always something negative. And it's like dispelling people at the moment until it hits them and they have to get one. But it's the example last week, recall, million Tesla cars recalled. He's going down. Blah, blah. All he had to do was a software update over the air.
That's right.
Problem
That's
solved.
right. Yeah.
But the mainstream didn't dig that. They just went straight headline. Again, dispelling the people not to get into it just yet, but it's coming. It's coming full throttle.
So in Australia, according to the government's own report, 6% of all of the CO2 emissions in Australia are transportation. But that includes trucks and tractors and domestic vehicles, buses and taxis and all those things. Of the transportation, it's only 2,000 of 98,000, which is, what is that? 2,002 of 98? That sounds like 2% to me, right? So 2% of the 6%. So it's a very, very small number. It's less than 1% of all of the CO2 emissions in Australia are from domestic vehicles, like domestically owned and used vehicles. Despite us, seeing them on the road, they're everywhere and they're doing everything. Think about the emissions that are from all of the trucks and all the the tractors farming and all of this. I'm not bagging out anything here, except when you look at the actual numbers, you say, well, even if every single motor vehicle on the road that was a privately owned vehicle, if they were all turned to EVs, we would be doing 2% of the 6% total emissions in Australia. I mean, it ends up being less than 1% of all of the emissions. It's kind of the wrong. You were starting at the pointy end. We should have started at the thick end, the low-hanging fruit. But this is the only one. By doing it this way, we're having to foot the bill ourselves, personally. And that's whether, I'm a motoring enthusiast. I love vehicles of all kinds. I really like the Tesla. And I like just how darn fast it is. I really like that. Does it look mean enough? Maybe not for me, right? That's okay. I haven't seen Tesla's racing yet, which would be in a whole thing to itself.
There's an idea. Oh wow!
If we had
Tesla round,
exactly, because I'm going up to Bathurst.
Yes.
After tomorrow, I drive up there, stay there for the week, and camp out, and have a lot of great discussions around fire pits and
I have seen Teslas do the quarter mile,
Me too. Me too. And I've seen them against all the supercars, and they win.
but the touring event would be something different.
It would be completely different. The
last one standing with their battery wins.
So the vehicles themselves are heavier than a regular vehicle. So my vehicle's, I think, 1,800, but there's like 2,300 TARE. And there is meant to be an amount of registration on the wear and tear of the roads, because the heavier vehicle, the more wear and tear there is on the bitumen. That's what they say. I know the EV tires are different. You can't just go and get the same tires that you would, put onto your regular vehicle that you can put onto those. No, because the vehicle's heavier. So there's some considerations, granted. Right? The battery life, I think the battery life is reasonably good for a vehicle that is an aluminium body. But they've just released a cardboard body EV, which I can't find the link to while we're talking.
Have you seen the Aptera?
Is that the one?
The Aptera, it looks like a dolphin.
Oh, wow. No, I haven't seen that.
That's coming.
Oh.
It's got solar power on it as well.
Yeah, there should have been a way of being able to capture more, as you're driving, you should be able to get something from it.
But again, like, I did hear you talk about the Rivian and its towing capacity.
That's right.
But that's assuming, everyone's towing a caravan all the time, Yeah, for one field out day, it's probably not going to work. But generally speaking, the numbers that are spent to, put the EVs down is quite laughable.
Yeah. So this was, it's interesting because I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of electric motors, have always been. And the battery is the thing that defines whatever we can do. So at the moment, we can't have long haul aircraft using electric motors. We can do short trips, which is fine. No dramas. The batteries using or graphene or other exotic materials are starting to look really promising, and their fast charge capabilities and their non-fire. You can't get a fire in these new batteries that they're developing right now. I'm watching, keeping abreast.
That is a concern, and that concern also sits with Tesla, where now they've done something, designed their vehicle so that the battery compartment separates from the car.
Nice.
The base. If something.
I always imagined that was something that you should be able to do.
Yeah.
So if you drove into a certain dock of some kind in your travels, whereas you park in there, it locks machinery, remove the battery, and it's replaced by another one, and you just keep driving. That whole process could take like 8 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, they've got that for one of these vehicles.
Yeah. That is,
but
if that can get
slow.
down to 30 seconds or something, you could have a real pit stop in a race.
Yeah, I've always thought that if you're going to make an EV and you need to charge, if little old granny can't do it, it ain't going to work.
Yeah,
exactly. Fly.
Yeah. So that Titan or the Revo, where it's exceedingly heavy. It's like basically like an electric Humvee, but you can't tow anything. In Australia, the distances that we would normally holiday, like you might drive 1,000 kilometers to another place on the continent and enjoy something that you've done for family history. You've passed it down. It's what you do now. It's like going to Bundanoon.
Yeah.
How's the Serenity? Right?
Again, that the range is a concern if you are a long distance driver, but someone like me, I could manage the day in and day out of, suburban travel or city office and so forth.
Even the work from home thing now is such a boon because, I don't have to go to work. I don't have to travel to work. I don't even need to be on an electric train to go to work. I can just stay at home and work. That's really important. That's number
Yeah.
one. Number two, I've had friends in the last 10 years who have retired. They've bought like a Ford F-250 and they've got like an 80-foot camper trailer that they tow around with a like a semi-trailer
Got something
hitch.
for you.
Where it's got a semi-trailer hitch, right? And they'll travel to Australia, renting their house out to pay for the fuel. But the distances they were traveling was 40,000 kilometers. I'm just saying, when I go on holidays, I drive 759 kilometers. I know exactly to the kilometer how far it is, and I wouldn't be able to do that in an EV without staying over and over and over and over and over again. However, that bites into how long that I can be at my destination, because we're only got a set amount of holiday period, and that's, I think, one of the things that is we've adapted. I'm going to just step it back. We've adapted our holiday destinations based on the amount you can drive in a day. We've adapted the holiday spots to stop at based on how far we can actually travel. I don't know, man, if you know, the Leyland brothers had a show on TV where they traveled Australia and they were in Land Cruisers or whatever, yeah? And
I just was a kid when that was finishing.
Yeah. Well, just north of Sydney, when your tank would be empty, they made a copy of Uluru, and it was a place you would stop, because you left Sydney and you drove, a couple of hours, and on these old roads, right, and used lots of fuel, and you would end up at this service station. It would look like the Uluru, the rock in the middle of Australia, and it was like a little place that you could stop and have a rest. However, petrol engines, for what they were, and the efficiencies we started to gain, meant that you could drive way past it. No one stopped there anymore. They recently demolished it right at the wrong time, because if they cranked it back up, they could be an EV charging station there. And you would stop. You totally stop there. But it's gone now, right? They sold the building or demolished it or whatever.
I think they're getting more there are like more American. There's a lot of Tesla stations popping up, and they've done what you just said. They've mapped out a route that you could go drive safely across America, and get to your charge points.
Yeah, that's right.
So it seems to me that not only have they got all the resources and the materials required for these vehicles, they're also installing it quietly, giving it the neg, and so therefore they've got the monopoly on it. I think the Rockefellers got out of petroleum about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Knowing full well this type of world's coming. We've got it, boys. Let's give it to them, because they probably enjoy it too. One of the Illuminati's grandkids has probably got a Tesla driving around.
More than one.
Freaking sick, mate.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I have to say, when my mate gave me a drive of his one, I was blown away by how awesome it is. And he had a extension cable come out of his house into his yard where he plugged it in undercover. It's pretty good.
But you know about the mining vehicles too, that the big trucks, they use electrical drive motors, but are powered by the diesel motors.
Yep. So no hassle with that, because underground, the more CO2 you make, the worse it is. So the mining industry, and we've got in the family, extended family, we have mining engineers. So yeah, I've been across what they're able to use there and underground, and that's really good that we're finally getting into this world, or that the distraction away into a polluting, petrol driven existence is finally waning. To be honest, even though I'm like a petrol engine burning kind of guy, I'm converting my car to E85 to ethanol. So it's at least it'll be on E85, which only has 15% non-renewable CO2, or 80 if you look at the other way. The inverse is 85% renewable CO2. So non-net new CO2. I think that's really important. And these are going to be conversations people start to to understand as we go forward that you can grow, switchblade grass, or a crop doesn't have to be corn, and it doesn't have to replace food source farmland, but you can take a product that's grown and then mow it so it's a renewable resource, and you could do that with electrical mowers, and you could pop that into distilling tubs, or brewing tubs, fermenting tubs, and create ethanol from it, which we could then use back again in those appliances. And it's a renewable resource, and it doesn't contribute to more CO2. We're going to get to a point where I believe that we're going to start to see a net reduction in CO2.
Actually, that's a good point you've raised here, the ethanol thing, because most people could distill that in their backyard.
Yeah.
You can't make a solar power panel without the factory doing it, where you can make your own ethanol with some, copper and distilling pots and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can use it. You don't have to use copper. Copper is good because it helps you get rid of some of the impurities, but because you're not going to be drinking it, it doesn't matter as much that the tops and tails remain a little. So, and they're not obviously as bad. They're bad if you drank it. I forget the names of those chemicals, but they're really bad for you. They're the ones that can make you go blind and a whole bunch of things. But the pure ethanol, which is basically just vodka, undiluted vodka, that's pretty easy to make. You could make that safely in your own house. And I would really appreciate if that was something you could do. I'm sure there's an additive rather than using a fossil fuel for 15% that could be created that stabilizes it or does whatever that 15% does. Because race fuel, while it's E85, the 15% is a mixture of different chemicals, and it's not all net new carbon. And that's what race cars use. They already use it. So if you were thinking about the evolution of any product, either make it a war device or make it a competitive sport. So if they had Tesla racing or EV racing, there would be advances more than Tesla could have created, because he doesn't have a competition to make it even better, to find the extra 0.5%, and then do that every year on year, until you end up with... Because remember, I don't know, man, if you know, but in the 70s, a car that made 100 horsepower, good luck with that. That would be the sports model. And that's in petrol. And since then, we've seen cars making in excess of 1,000 horsepower coming out of car manufacturers. We're not driving a square cube anymore. We're driving a sleek wind tunnel or a virtual wind tunnel version of a car with as much aerodynamics to kind of reduce the drag. We used to have cars in excess of 2.5. Now they're down to 1.1, 1.2, even as slick as 0.9. These are all coefficient of friction numbers. So they're getting quite good. And I think there's a lot more, way more we could go. When I look at the aerodynamics of a Tesla, I think there's a lot of work they could still do on it. It isn't perfect, but it's filled the gap, and it's been the transition from what cars look like today, and it's taken them at least a couple of decades in the future. Because remember, every single year they change a grille on a car, or they change the wing mirrors, or
you need to see the app Terra. Google now, AP Terra.
All right.
Check that out.
But this is what I'm saying.
This is the future.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that thing's crazy looking.
That's efficiency.
That's
built around efficiency.
This is it. So automobile manufacturers have, in my mind, have been responsible for an outrageous amount of use of fuel due to their inefficiencies and the amount of drag behind the car. This thing looks like it's an aeroplane on the ground.
So, now that company, there's a bit of a story behind them. They got bought out and now they're going live. I think they were around a decade ago. So again, even 20, 30 years prior to that, there was the electric car.
Yeah.
They hushed up and crushed thousands of them. And I think Jay Leno may have one and someone else.
Right.
And so, yeah, who killed the electric car? And again, they've bought their time. They've got all their required resources, and here we go. This is it. And they're hushing it up now with the mainstream. Again, I think just to get the monopoly on it and let companies grow up that they feel be best utilized by their idea, sort of deal. Because there was a Russian guy who got shut down while Tesla was doing his thing. There was another company in Russia called Nikola, and it was all, Nikola Tesla's name. But he went just silent. They shut him down and said, he was hoaxing it. He was hoaxing it. It was a big hoax. So it was a bit sus, It was there and then it wasn't. So.
Well, the last people that you would ever want to upset is big energy. Yeah, you don't want to upset, the petrochemical industry. That's not in your favor. It ends up with people being never found again in the desert somewhere.
Yeah, but I think even those blokes not knowing, like Ford and that, they're not making the changes that Tesla's doing.
No,
Tesla's
they're not
pumping out like vehicles. He's got the 3D printing, not the 3D printing. He does like
the huge Ali press now
pieces.
he's got, right? The largest aluminium press in the world.
That's it. You can do it in like 5 goes or something.
Yeah, that's right.
And boom, there's a car. Yeah. So Ford and all them other companies haven't really jumped on board with that, and it's like they've been left out in the dark. So they're going to all collapse. It's either get on board or collapse. And they've probably got 7 years to adjust till they bring in all these laws. What, they ban lawnmowers in California?
Yes.
Like petrol ones.
Yep.
So obviously get an electric one.
Yeah, so legislating is the last step. But before then, so just pretend you and I made a car that ran only on water. Say we channeled Stanley Meyer, you and I, and we made a vehicle that could run on water. Would you tell anyone?
Probably. Bob Lazar did it as well. He built one based on hydrogen.
Yeah, well, the hydrogen vehicle, yeah.
Yeah, he's showing it in video, like Stanley Meyer did, and mainstream doesn't go with it. They don't say nothing.
That's
Same
true.
Interest.
Yeah. Well, the last thing you want to do is go against your sponsor. And today's sponsor is Shell. Right? Or Ampol or someone. You don't want to go, or BP. You don't want to go against any of them, because the next
British
thing is
Petroleum.
you don't exist. So I wouldn't tell anyone, even if I did create the technology to run my car.
Well, knowing that now, yes, definitely.
It's
you
not
just
the
run
time
your car
to
on it,
yeah,
you?
not the time to start dancing around that you've got a car that runs on water. Apparently, it's been done a number of times that I've heard about, but the Stanley Meyer's the name that has been associated with that. And it looks like Pones is gone. I don't know why. Hey, back again.
There was a giant X on my thing and I pushed it. I thought it was going to back out, but it closed the call.
Yeah, it'll do that. So anyway, so yeah, you don't want to be a Stanley Meyer, right? Because he ended up dead, and that's a real hard thing. You don't go up against the big tech, just make the little steps. And I think by the media doing, negging everything that Musk is doing, is supporting themselves only, not the information they're propagating, but is saying, look, we're playing the game. We're trying to downplay it.
Yeah. It's not necessarily that they're just saying all bad things about him. It's like a story will come out that they just say the headline and it's in a negative, like just the Tesla 1 million car recall.
Yeah.
Boom, that's it. Leave it at that. Let the people think for themselves.
Yeah, that's it.
So you're going to think negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That, I've just come off a battery fire story. Oh my God, this guy's really bad. But if to the initiated who research, it's clear as day that, well, it's not clear as day. It's happening. It's just happening. So get on board, mate. Get into that world because it's coming.
Yeah. Now there's a bunch of, like you said, the existing automobile industry is just doing straight swaps. They're just doing swapsies. Swap out the petrol engine for an electric engine that fits the same thing.
Some do the hydrogen fuel tank as well.
Yeah, that's true. Now,
but see,
we all have the Hindenburg in our head Tesla. When we talk about carrying hydrogen around with us.
Yeah, Tesla's the only one in profit. He builds his own batteries as well. He doesn't have to outsource anything from China. That's right. It's all in-house.
Yeah.
So
that's how you control supply chain, people.
Yeah.
Right. And look, I appreciate it. I do appreciate the revolution that he's creating, because he can't, in his head, he looked at the world and went, "You're all mad. Why aren't you doing this?" And no, I just can't do that. Don't tell me you can't do it. Here it is.
And he's also, whilst I think he's a puppet of somebody, but he's not competing against China at all, because one of his factories is in China, and that's pumping out heaps of cars for the European market as well as for China. So
he'd prefer that everyone was EV, even though he has to compete against them eventually.
Well, there's one component to get more people in Europe onto this solar wind aspect is what's just happened. The gas thing.
Yeah, now I actually have
going, all right,
I've got a thing about that. Oh, where was it?
The UFOC, Baltic Sea.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. So I've got this one. So this is...
story.
Story. So European officials says sabotage likely causes suspicious Nord Stream leaks. Yeah, we knew that. We did. We knew. Everyone in the world went, probably looks like sabotage. Well, finally a European official, whoever that is, said it. And interestingly enough, that comes... Well, I'll leave that on the screen for a second so you can have a look to see them. It says he made a threat to Russia publicly, and it's talking about Joe Biden back in February or January this year. At this very first sniff of there being trouble with Russia going into Ukraine. He said, well, the US could take that out. We could take out the Nord Stream. But just a few days after the Nord Stream was taken out, a brand new pipeline opened up, and I think it's between Sweden and Germany. You don't hear much about it. But because I think
anything about it.
The bitter taste in our mouth is supposed to be hating on Russia.
I got to drop this because I think it's intriguing. I heard it from Patrick English on B the other night. So the story's intriguing. I checked it out, but I think it was September 8th. It was obviously prior. The CEO of the Nord Stream, his plane just went off. It lost comms, and it just flew. It just flew over the Baltic Sea and just flew past its destination. It kept going. Fighter pilots went up beside it, couldn't see anyone in it. So they'd either were taken out or collapsed inside the plane.
Yeah.
So the CEO of that pipeline was taken out several weeks prior to some event.
Wow.
So when he mentioned that guy's name, and I was like, okay, that's a bit weird. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dug in, and that's what happened apparently. The plane just kept going on a straight line until it crashed into the Baltic Sea. and the head of the freaking pipeline.
Wow.
So, shout outs to Patrick, by the way. CEO, Nord, plane crash.
Yeah, well, I'm typing that in right now. See what we can come up with. Yeah, it says Georgia. Plane crash kills CEO, 3 others. It happened pretty fast. And I'm just going to put the image of that news story up so you can find it yourself. And this is at news.com.au. Wow. A financial firm CEO was killed along with 3 others when a small plane he was flying crashed shortly after takeoff in Georgia, according to reports. He is the chief executive of the entire global companies. Wow. I didn't know
Keep
about that
reading.
story. Oh, yeah, cool. Jonathan Rosen, 47, the chief executive of Antair Global Companies, was the pilot of the single-engine Cessna P210N when it went down in a burst of flames Friday afternoon at DeKalb Peachtree Airport.
Okay, that's a different one.
That's October 10th. Oh, actually, that was a year ago. So there must be a new CEO then.
Well, there would have been one after him.
Oh, if you've got it.
Let me go Nord Stream to plane crash Baltic. I saw the story because I checked it out.
Yeah, right.
I can't find it.
Here's another. I've got another CEO crash. I think this might be important too. Glenn DeVries, CEO who went into space with William Shatner. Remember that on the Blue Origin?
Yeah.
He died in a small plane crash in New Jersey.
Jeez.
I mean, it was after he went into space with William Shatner.
Yeah. What was he CEO of?
Oh, I don't know. The story's too long.
It's Latvia crash. No, that's the one.
Latvia?
Latvia, yeah. They're saying it's Cessna. Not an old-fashioned Cessna, though.
Yeah, right.
Karl Peter Griezmann.
That's
a
the one.
prominent German businessman was aboard the plane with 3 others, which, same as what you were saying. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
And where did it crash? I'm sure it was the Baltic Sea.
Yep, it is. It says wreckage and oil have been found where the private Cessna plane crashed into the Baltic Sea off Latvia's coast after a mysterious flight from southern Spain. The Cessna, registered in Vienna, had been due to land in Cologne, Germany, but instead headed out into the Baltic. German businessman Peter Griezmann died. It was his private plane. German media say the 3 other victims were his wife, daughter, and her boyfriend. Good grief. Wow. It doesn't associate him with the pipeline.
All right.
No, I'm still looking into that.
Yeah. Check.
Oh, yeah, I'll just look up his name and see.
Yeah.
Wow. Goodness me. Good find.
Oh, there's Patrick's mentioned the other night. I think he mentioned it was, if anything, it was because it crashed over that area. So maybe they would have put search and rescue crews in, a la secret submarine vessel to go down and look for something.
Yeah.
A la gonna plant something while I'm down here. Howard Hughes-esque. I'm just making a movie, but I'm trying to steal your submarine secrets, Russia. So, yeah, I can't find the connection between him and being any part of the Nord Stream. So, yeah, that's a good correction.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe there's more to this story than we know.
Oh, for sure. So what was he a businessman off then? Does it say?
Yeah,
anything?
I'm looking into that. And the Guardian ran a story.
And September 4th, it happened.
Yeah, right.
So 3 weeks.
See if I can.
Who was Peter Gleisman? All right. Well-known businessman, media face, and internet personality from Cologne, Germany. He was famously known in the country as an amazing businessman. According to the sources, he was owner of the Gleisman Group, which handled the construction projects. He excelled in his business and worked a lot in his country. So he's probably straight out of Die Hard. Construction company. His wife, daughter, bodyguard, traveling back, lost contact. Doesn't give me a real, doesn't say he was part of that at all, but that happened.
Yeah, well, look, I wonder if maybe he was. You don't know how much gets cleansed as well, I have to ask. Yeah. Oh, look, anyway. Very interesting story nonetheless. One of the things that we'd been looking into was that there were US ships in the area in the Baltic Sea where the Nord Stream had been taken out, probably 50 k's from it, and the week prior. And after that, they weren't there. They left. So,
well, the other one they've got that they say Russia's got is the internet cutting submarines or ships.
Mm-hmm.
So if they start cutting the internet off, that's going to be hell.
Yeah, that's right. So all the fiber that lays just on the sea floor, you can put shaped charges on those, or you can reach down and cut it.
Yeah.
So there's enough slack in those to be able to pull it to the surface to do repairs. And that's what we know. And
I think that's what Tesla satellites will be for.
Yeah.
That component of history.
Because that replaces it. That's a way of continuing the internet, even if foul play was to take part.
Yeah. And they'll slow...
But then you could EMP those satellites out of existence.
Oh, you'd need a few missiles to do so, I think. Though.
Oh, I know.
If he's going to put 30,000 up.
Yeah, I know. The part of this new internet, new GPS and everything is that China's put its own GPS satellites up, and they use a frequency and they're encoded, like encrypted. So you can't use them unless you've got their tech, which I think is really interesting. What we would look at if terrestrial internet was broken, yes, Starlink is all we have. And as intermittent as that might be, depending on if there was a global conflict, they could be the things that are left in space. The rest of the satellites can be disabled, and there is a project that I've seen some details on, which is to disable enemy satellites. And enemy just means whoever you're going against. Doesn't mean any current enemies, because we don't know what the landscape's going to look like. But also listening in. So you maneuver your satellite just to the left behind one of the satellites that are currently in space, and the beam is wide enough for you to intercept the beam that's being transmitted to that satellite, and you can just sit and listen, and you can record all that data for later. You can check out how they've encrypted their data and eventually break it. That depends on your technology, but yes, it might just sound like white noise today, but maybe you can work it out. At least you can work out the multiple frequencies that are used. And I think that's really important to understand, that's the level of tech that we're currently fighting. We're fighting a soft war in space already, but without weapons.
Actually, that word you just said, soft war.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's a software war as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And so the AI, I mean, encryption these days is what's there to encrypt? Can you pick up some eggs from the store? You know what I mean? There's really nothing to encrypt because to me, like, again, China's got their puppet masters, Russia does, America does.
Yeah.
So whatever's acting out is, if there's nuclear war, there probably won't be actually nuclear war. It'll be shown on TV as that, using like deep fake, all that kind of thing. But the history books will say, you know, that's what happened. It doesn't necessarily have to happen at all. So whatever the plan is, it's just these subtle pushes, you know, here, go this way now, en masse. Okay, now we'll go this way now, here, en masse. And
Winners write
the
the
next step
history.
is that unfortunately that hurricane has done a lot of damage, in whether manipulated or not. That, you know, I sit here, it's a nice day, I'm like, what's everyone complaining about? But stuff is happening. So yeah.
Yeah,
No idea
I
where I was
watched
going with
Ian. I watched Ian go, you know, build up rapidly too, like crazy fast, and it had like an 18 feet tide, like a storm surge. That's
Have you-
crazy. That's a lot of
Have you
water.
heard we've gone past that tipping point they've spoken about in the whole Earth? That all the currents have changed, everything's changed, and could be the beginning of that mini ice age.
I my jury's out. I'm not seeing it like getting colder yet. The thing is that if you stop the ocean conveyor, then you'll see some areas rapidly cool, who were, you know, only warm now because of the warm ocean current that flows past them. That's really interesting to see what would be a result of that. The other is the melting could cease, and yes, you might see some ice build up in the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere has a great deal less of ice. We're lucky to build up enough to, you know, to do anything. The water here gets pretty cold coming up the coast, but if that stopped, then it would be warmer from where I am. And I can't wait to see what happens. It's like if you're watching a soccer match or a cricket match or a football match or something on the field, you don't know which way that is going to go. And I think right now, I'm not going to call it. I think it's warming. But
your floods were pretty immense.
The floods were bad. The fires were bad. Everything's bad. We had,
when it drops 400 mils in one day.
I know. That's a lot of water.
Yeah.
But we're not made for it. So our streets are only made to have 10 mil, 20 mil before it pools in and starts flooding. You get 100 mil, and you've got instant flooding. And anything greater than that is maybe it's worse, and it only gets worse. But not like in a monsoon country in the, you know, equatorial region where they've got 2 foot deep drains on the side of the road. That is an actual hazard if you fell into one. It's all concrete and very narrow. But here we're not. We're just not made for it. We haven't ever designed for it. And all the valleys that are completely flat, you know, and have a very slow angle down towards the sea, they're all floodplains. Now we've always called them floodplains because when you dig them up, you can see that it's sedimentary.
Who's going to win tonight?
I don't know. Eels.
Yeah.
That's
Panthers.
Yeah, good. I don't follow football, but I know who's playing.
It's all right. I don't follow rugby either.
Yeah.
Just the grand final.
Oh,
the granny.
So in
Second
Bathurst,
granny.
do you follow the V8s or the supercars?
I'd like watching it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. I hope Shane Van
We'll see you in the
Gisbergen.
crowd.
Yeah, well, you will, and hopefully, if you no, that looks like we might have the cameras come up
Put a
to the
tinfoil hat
campsite.
on.
Someone's organised the
Tinfoil
cameras
hat.
to come up to the campsite and do a piece with us. So they usually do it every year. but they
Let's see,
don't
on
always
Channel
make.
10.
Yeah.
Is it on 10 or 7?
Well, I'll leave that up to the whoever got the rights.
Right.
But it's no longer the Super Cheap. It's the Repco Bathurst 1000 this year. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
Oh, that's interesting. It'll be the Marvel Bathurst in the future.
Oh, that'd be
Disney
good.
Bathurst.
Wow.
Powered by Gatorade.
Disney taking
Got
Star Wars
electrolytes.
has changed it for sure.
Got electrolytes.
But everything needs electrolytes. Do you know
Car
what?
needs electrolytes.
You won't guess. It's the end of the show.
I know.
I really thank you for being with us.
Face.
Thanks for
worries,
filling
mate.
in for Meckie's gap. And you're
Take
welcome
care, right?
anytime, absolutely anytime, Pants. So guess what? This has been another Shiny Side Out with Dave and No Meckie today. Catch Jer Bear's awesome show coming up next, After Hours. Dial in and be part of it. And we'll see you next week, and maybe through the week where I'm absent, but Meckie will be here to play this game.